Hey guys, this is Crap Hunter, and welcome back to the mini-series for World of Tanks. Woo! Now, today we're going to be having not only a look at the Panzerkampfwagen 3-4, we're also going to be having a little talk on, well, another tactic for this mini-series. Hopefully I can think of one. Just kidding, I know. Anyway, primarily though, this is going to be one about looking at my path as I went up through the line. So after I somehow got through the Panzer III, I realized my woes. And I was, however, excited for this thing because I hadn't read the description, boom, which was intended to use parts of the components of 3 and 4, only existed in blueprints. Yeah. Put it in this perspective. This vehicle, I hadn't realized at the time, was kind of like the gone-off spawn of the Panzer IV. Here's the Tier 5 Panzer IV. In the previous tiering, in the previous style of tiering, because before it went all sideways, it used to be that both of these tanks would eventually lead to the VK3601H. That was how it was. It was like basically two different lines, but mostly both of them were going to be going down towards the VK. So it was kind of a case of, at this point, it was more a case of, if you want to go down this line, then go for it. And as I'd already gone through the Panzer III, I thought I might as well kind of go down the Panzer IV, 3-4, because, well, you know, it's not, it's not a Panzer IV, but I'm certain it'll do something good. Oh, how wrong I was. Well, anyway, let's get on to the stats of this thing. So, hit points, 440. That's quite low. Yeah, that is quite low. Well, okay, well, let's have a look at some of the other tanks before we cast the inevitable hated judgment. Okay, the Type T-34, right? 410 off the beat. With that upgradable, 450. Now, I'm going to assume that the T-34 here as well is going to be 450. Yeah, 400, so that's going to be like 450. So we already know those two are 450. What about the French? The French don't have any mediums at this tier. Okay, what about your tier, what about the German Panzer IV? What about him? Does he have more hit points? Oh. Yes, the Panzer IV, when it has an upgraded turret, has 460 hit points. Ah, yes, that's not good. Shit. The Crusader, when fully upgraded, although it's there, has 450 hit points. So 10 better than you. Ah. Right. What about the Yanks? I mean, the Yanks have something, right? 400, and it goes up to 460, like our Russian counterpart. Yeah, no. German counterpart. Ah. Yes. Not good. And of course our Chinu, 440 off the beat. With upgradable turret. Ow. Shit. Okay, so the hit points wise, this thing really lacks. In fact, I think this is probably near the bottom of the line. When it comes to hit points, which is really quite annoying. Because obviously you're so easily killed in this thing. But I suppose in a sense it was kind of useful because it teaches you, and I suppose it's meant to teach you how to be careful with your tank, and sort of how not to be an idiot with it. So in a sense, as much as having low hit points, it did in a sense teach me that I can easily die no matter how fast I was. Speaking of which, you weigh 25.7 tons with no equipment on, and combined with your 585 horsepower, the tank gets 23.33 horsepower per ton, or in English, 55 speed limit, or 55 kilometers per hour. That's pretty fast, actually, and you will find yourself getting to that speed relatively quickly. And the traverse speed as well of 36 degrees. This is a nimble tank. I mean, that's not a bad thing. I mean, it's not fantastic, but considering it's quite a nimble tank. Unfortunately, it's not. I suppose, in a sense, the best thing to say is that it inherits some of the traits from the Panzer IV. It, inherits the speed of it, which isn't too bad. And the traverse as well, not as bad either. That's pretty useful. Which, like I said, it's not bad. It's kind of an average thing. It's like a fast tank medium. It's like a fast medium. It's meant to go a certain distance fast and not bad. It doesn't do bad in that region. Moving on to armor. This thing has very bad armor. 60 to the front, 60 to the side, and 40 to the rear. Now, there is angling. There is something I am noting that is good. This thing actually has some angling. So, what we're going to do... Oh, for the turret, 50 on the front, 30 to the sides, 30 to the rear. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to nip onto my favourite, Tank Inspector, to show you just how much armour there really is on this thing. So, here we are on Tank Inspector, and here's the Panzerkampfwagen 3-4. Let's have a look-see at how armoured this thing is. Now, don't be fooled, the redness just highlights the strongest part of the armour, of which is the hull. It is actually quite good all the way round. It is 60 pretty much all the way, so that is something of worth merit. And facing it frontally, you're looking at about, if it's about there, you're looking at about 80 millimeters of frontal armor, which is pretty good if you have a low caliber gun. If you're facing tier 4s and stuff, you'll be fine. Tier 5s, this is nothing. Most tier 5s will get through you without problems. You could angle like that, and you can get something like 140. So in a sense, angling would be a recommended tactic for sure. Definitely a high recommendation for tactics, but you are also peppered with weak points. Just to show you, you've got the machine gun mantlet over here, which is highlighted in brown. You've got ever so tiny weak point here, which is this little thing, being at 66 millimeters, so you can pen through that. You also have this as well. I don't know how that is penetrable, but that is apparently easily penetrated. And of course, you have also the armor of the mantlet that you can go through. This thing can't stop anything. Its highest value for armor is only 70. If you're shooting directly at it, you're looking at maybe a ricochet on that, but most likely most shells will pop up and kill it. And not to mention this thing, this massive cupola, which sticks out like a sore thumb, and it's very easy to shoot. Another disadvantage you'll have if you're facing the side of this thing is you've got doors there, so these two, along with the vision slit, will be easy to shoot. Like, imagine them as bullseye. In fact, it is a bullseye, a metallic bullseye, to be honest with you. Very nasty, very big, a biggish weak point. Also, as I said, you've got the trapdoors on the side. Whether or not they actually cause, like, ammo racking capabilities, possibly, maybe not. I couldn't say really, but most certainly something to be consider, of course, when engaging. Apart from that, you've got the hull armor, of which is very penetrable. In fact, there's a lovely biggish gap between there's a big enough gap to make it an easy shot, and if you get in somewhere around here, you'll undoubtedly get a shot in and knock out the engine. Also, speaking of engine, don't forget, just because there's tracks under here doesn't mean that you can't shoot the underglacius. The underglacius of this thing I think if the Panzer III chassis can't, if the Panzer III, if this thing takes anything from the Panzer III, then certainly it'll take the weakness of the underglacius, because you can see it's quite a nice big juicy target. So for weak points, pretty much everywhere, but for primary weak points, here, and somehow, for some reason, here as well. So if you really want to do damage, and you've got them on the angle, you can shoot there. You see, this is the thing about this bloody tank. I mean, it's a small target, mind. You could easily miss, but if you hit it, you can still shoot it. I mean, this is the thing about this tank, which I don't know why. If I'd known how bad this tank would be armor-wise, I probably wouldn't have gone for it, because you can only angle that way. If you angle that way, there's a chance that the shell will just hit that, which will penetrate, because it sticks out so much. You know, the turret is very badly armored. yeah. So anyway, back to the weaknesses. Weaknesses for the front. Here and here. Obviously under here as well. Obviously the turret. The entire turret itself, to be honest with you, is a weak point. Its very pitiful armor will not stop many things. If it will pretty much nearly every gun. In fact, I fear a tier 1 gun could go through that without too much difficulty. So, you know, if tier 1 hits the side, you're screwed. So, yeah, if I think the #1 tactic for those driving this thing, avoid being shot at, or at least angle. If you can angle, brilliantly. If you have to angle that way, good luck, because you're going to have to really persevere and not get shot there, because that's quite a big target. Whereas on this side, you can have actually quite a nice and relaxed time. But yeah, so unfortunately this thing is very bad for armor. I'll see you back in the garage, guys. So, moving on down the list, we actually find an actual advantage of this thing. A very, very fast turret traverse speed. Now, although this isn't really the most critical advantage you have, you can at least still, I would say, take advantage of this. I mean, there are most certainly going to be situations in which having a faster turret traverse speed will help you. Though, admittedly, they could be few and far between. But still, as an advantage, listing it as, that's a very good turret traverse speed. In fact, I think there's a few tanks out there who are, like, close to... I think the Cromwell, if I'm not mistaken, the Cromwell, who I've known to have the fastest turret traverse speed at the moment. What's she? 48, so you're faster than the Cromwell. And the Comet, 46. So, yeah... an incredibly fast turret traverse speed, very useful, given flanking and flanking situations. Going on down to view range and signal range. Now, for view range, you have 320. Well, before we judge, let's have a look at your tier 5 counterparts to see how they fare in comparison. The Type T-34. What's your view range? 350. Nervous because if a German tank. Okay, what about your counterpart, your Panzer IV counterpart? Panzer Ostef H 350. Okay, so not so good. What about Crusader? Crusader. This thing is, although this is a light tank, this is the tier 5 medium charger basically. She kind of is as much as she is a kind of a medium tank. 360. Oh dear. Not good. What about the Americans? The M4 Sherman. Surely she 370. Oh dear. So the Americans are doing much better. And of course the T-34 has 350. One more nation. Japan. Holding out for you. And 350. So, yeah, you suck. Pretty badly, in fact. This thing is not good for long range. This thing isn't very good for long range engagements. Certainly can't see far enough. So, yeah, this thing is bad for view range. Quite bad for view range. Onto signal range, however, it kind of flips itself because you have the Fug 12. One of my favourite radios of the German tech tree. Most certainly of which, because you research it once, you almost never have to research it ever again. It is probably one of the handiest things I've ever bought for to be honest with you, any kind of tech tree. The radio, as much as it doesn't really affect you with that much in battle, it most certainly helps you when it comes to grinding tanks, because to know that you don't have to worry about any of these vehicles, to, to get radios whilst you're grinding them, that is immensely helpful. And also, don't forget, 710 signal range in combat as well allows you to be, as much as you can't maybe spot far, at least you can spot for your team, and also maybe get some nice patrol duties simply because you had enough view range, because you had enough signal range to transmit the data to the rest of your team. But let's have a look-see also at how your friends compare. So, the Type T-34 only gets a tier 8 radio, which only gets 525, so you're better than the Type T-34. The Panzer IV gets the Fug 12. Yeah, she gets the Fug 12. So you're on par with your German counterpart. Shouldn't have done that. What about the it's a Combinator. What about the Crusader? It gets a Tier 8 radio, only 550 signal range. So, better than the British. What about the Americans? A Tier 9 radio, only 615 signal range. So, although, so you have to go up a few tiers. In fact, you have to go up a number of tiers for the Americans before you get the top tier radio, which, if I'm not mistaken, you can research at a lower tier, but you have to have a specific tank. So the Americans have to take their time. What about Neparuski? Well, they have the same tier 8 radio, giving 525 signal range. So, better than the Russians. And finally, the Japanese. The Japanese get a tier 8 radio, 550. So, you may fail in a fair amount of departments, but the one saving grace is that you're fast, and you've got a decent, and you've got a very good turret traverse speed, and you've got decent radio range. So maybe this might seem like a scout to some of you guys out there. Maybe. I mean, she's a medium tank, but she's quite a shit medium tank. So yeah, it could just possibly be that this thing is more of a scout than anything else, which is probably why I was sucking in it so bad. I'm not much of a scouter, to be honest with you. Now, onto the guns, and you don't really get a good selection. Well, let's go into the tech tree before anything. So, yeah, that's it. Yeah, like I said, you don't get a good selection. 2 guns. One of which is absolutely god-awful, and I feel so sorry for you if you have to go through this thing. The L-43. This vile beast of burden is your top gun, and I swear to God, this is the top gun you had on that, but you shouldn't have used it. If you did, you're a pleb. Because you have the L-60, which is a far greater gun, in that tank. In this tank, it's actually redeemed itself a little bit. It has 103 penetration, which actually makes a little bit more sense. It's still crap in comparison to many other Tier 4 guns that Tier 5 gets, but, whatever. It has 13.59 rounds, 110 damage, obviously you see the penetration, very terrible accuracy. This is Russian accuracy, and a god-awful 2.3 second aiming time. This gun is probably the worst. Well, I wouldn't say the worst because the AMX-40 has worse, but this thing is quite bad, and I feel sorry for anyone having to go through it. I feel sorry for myself because I had to go through it, and it's not an enjoyable thing. And it doesn't really get much better, to be honest with you. Now, this is the L-48. Now, you do get this as a top gun on the Panzer IV. But also, on the Panzer IV, as much as I would deny it being useful, you also get an L-28. In fact, you get a far greater selection of guns on the Panzer IV than you do on the good old, well, not good old, shit old, Panzer III to 4. Like I said, this thing is like the little runt of the kitten, and it doesn't get rewarded much. I mean, yes, you do have a good gun at the, well, I say good. You get a decent gun. I mean, that's the only thing you have afterwards, but, so to use this is not great. It's not a great gun, to be honest with you. But, it's what you've got to use, and it's far greater than the L7, the L-43, so, I guess you'll just have to use this for a while. And, yeah. 13 rounds a minute, 110 pen, same damage as before, much better accuracy, still the shitty 2.3 second aiming time. But, considering how fast you are, and considering the kind of tactics, which I suppose the only thing that you could do is possibly scouting, well, I don't know. I mean, this is the thing. I haven't driven this in... I mean, I've driven it recently, but it's the distance is still long enough for me to forget how useful this tank can actually be. unfortunately, you're not going to have a good time grinding on this. And if you are considering going down, I mean, this is a much better alternative, mind, than going on the Leopard line to get to the Indian Panzer. But it's not a pleasant grind, I will give you that. Drive other tanks in Germany before you lose the will to live. But yeah, so gun-wise, it's quite bad. But, you know, like I said, you've got to use it, so you might as well work with it. So, moving on to equipment and crew skills. Now, I would be surprised that you want to keep this thing after eliting it, but if you are the collecting type, then here is what I would recommend. Naturally, for the first two equipments, you want to have ventilation and medium caliber gun rammer. These two most important things will aid you in crew performance and gun reload rate. The third option, though, is always as up to you, but here are my recommendations. First of all, naturally, you will want an enhanced gun laying drive. This thing will provide valuable reduce aiming seconds, which will most certainly help you in the heat of battle. Now this is interesting because I'm thinking about this tank in the more sense of being a scout. This thing probably would do well either having coated optics if you're an active scout, if you like to drive a lot and sort of hide around enemy flanks, or if you're more of a passive scout, then grab yourself some binocular telescopes. That's my number 2 recommendation, grabbing scopes of whatever you fancy doing more. Finally, thirdly, I would say additional grousers would probably be a goodish choice if you're the kind of person who wants to go even faster with your tank. And finally, if this is the sort of least useful, but probably would help you, is the medium spore liner. Now, okay, that only protects you from you being hit by artillery or you're ramming someone, but it also protects your crew from injuries, so most certainly will help you out with that. Going on to crew skills, I would recommend giving your commander something like repairs. Repairs will then get them to 100%, then swap them out for Sixth Sense. Once you've done that, go straight back up to repairs, get that, and then afterwards go for something like Eagle Eye, because then that way it can provide valuable information to you, and if you're working in a platoon, can help you identify targets that need to be knocked out quickly. Otherwise, repairs, recon, just usual, could have helped your tank out slowly sort of things. For gunner, naturally I'm going to state snapshot would be a high recommendation for me from my perspective, because accuracy during turret rotation means once you aim on a target, less time to have to worry about him. But once you have got that to 100%, train another skill up to like maybe 30 or 40%, but then swap it out, drop both skills, and then get Deadeye. This is the thing which isn't the main thing to sort of think. This isn't the main sort of tip from the video, but if you want to get a perk to work, you do not just instantly swap it out, because you will take an experience kind of penalty, if you will, for dropping a skill out. So what you want to do is you want to train that up and then get another skill up to 30 or 40%, so that way when you do swap it out, the penalty for swapping out skills will not be enough to reduce you to having to have 99% on Deadeye or something, because that would suck and it will take a long time. It will take more time than is necessary to get something like that. Once you have that, do the same process for designated target. This basically means that your target will be visible for 2 more seconds, either to you or to someone on your team who can most certainly knock him out. Naturally, I would tell your driver to use clutch braking, because then you can have an extra increase in vehicle rotation, which is super handy, most certainly. But because this thing is so good at traversing already, it would also make sense for you to do the same process I said before, training another skill up to 40, then dropping both skills to get preventative maintenance. This basically helps you gain reduce the chances of an engine fire by preventing the gas or oil leakage into the engine compartment. It certainly will help. After of which you can train, once you've trained the clutch braking again, go for something like maybe smooth ride is probably better off, because anything to reduce the accuracy, to increase the accuracy of this gun, it'll help. It'll no doubt help. After which it helps just speeding things up or controlling pat, but generally speaking, those would be my recommendations for the driver. Now, for the radio operator, I actually want you to not train in repairs, but instead situational awareness. This actually extends your view range. Not sure how, but I ain't complaining. So most certainly train him up to being 100%, and then train him to be 100% in repairs. Maybe once you hit 100% in repairs, swap the skill out for Call for Vengeance, because then it enables the radio operator who survived the destruction of his vehicle to report the enemy positions for another 2 seconds. This may not exactly, overly help the situation, but you never know. It could help your team knock out the enemy who just took you out. And for your loader, I would recommend repairs till 100%, then train another skill, swap it out for safe stowage, and then do the same process again for Adrenaline Rush. Now, for those who don't know what safe stowage or Adrenaline Rush is, well, safe stowage basically allows your shells, it basically increases the ammo rack durability, which then reduces the chance for you getting ammo racked. The Adrenaline Rush actually helps you out because when you're less than 10% of your hit points are left, you can actually fire faster. Basically, it accelerates the gun reloading, and it means that you may yet survive to do more damage to your opponent, / perhaps survive and win the game. So most certainly an advantage that is very good idea to have. So, summary time. Now, this tank, while it does have pretty bad armor, and most certainly has a terrible gun, I think still can be used if, of course, you know what you're doing with it. I mean, obviously, this thing, I wouldn't recommend you keep this thing, because there are far better tanks. But for those who have to grind through this, or those who, for some reason, have a thing for this, my recommendation for this thing would be, at the lower tiers, be a medium, because you can actually, when you are higher tiered, you can use your armor to your advantage, and you can angle, which, this thing can do. Because of its angled armor, you can ricochet stuff. It's very difficult, but you can still do it. And if you're lower tier, then use use your other advantage, which is your speed and your radio to help scout. I mean, you're not the ideal scout, but I reckon a medium tank who can spot enemy targets far better than other tanks and be able to report their position is far more useful than a potential idiot scout driver. Don't be afraid to shake things up with this vehicle. Try out different tactics, and who knows, maybe you might find the perfect combination of scout and medium. But either way, I would say that this vehicle, looking back on it, it is a very bad tank, and if I had the option of going through this again, I probably wouldn't, because now it leads to a tank which I don't quite like. I mean, luckily for me, I researched the tier 7, so I don't have to worry ever about researching that. But that said, going through, looking back on it, it was an alright time. It was alright at the time. When it used to link up to that, it was an alright tank. It did the job. Personally, I should have gone for that, but you live and you learn. So, yeah, I mean, that's what I would say about this vehicle. It's difficult. It's the runt of the litter, so you have to be extra careful with it. But then again, it may yet teach you some tactics on either how to be a good medium or how to be a good scout medium if your tank isn't as good as it should be. So, on to the lesson. What is it? Now, remember, guys, if I had once told you way back when, probably either in the last or last before video, know your tank, know your tactics, right? Remember that piece of advice? Well, on this one, know your environment. Now, this kind of does coincide with know your tank, know your tactics, but sometimes the tactics which you would apply in one place will not exactly apply to the other. And most surprisingly, sometimes certain tanks which you would assume would have, this is a medium, being clearly, shouldn't have to be a, should only be a medium, can't do anything else. Surprisingly, given the terrain, can actually enact itself on a totally different style of tactics. Or, vice versa, there can be a heavy tank which can drive so fast that you can flank enemy mediums and give them a run around. So, most certainly something to consider whilst playing World of Tanks. Don't just assume that because you're driving a heavy tank, you have to apply heavy tank tactics to every situation. If you know your tank can do something extra special, try use the environment to help you. I mean, 6 times out of 10, or 60% of the time, you will be having to use your heavy tank tactics for the heavy tank scenario. But it's always a good idea to keep your mind open about tactics, because not only do you then have the ability to perform something extra special in that game, you also can have the chance of perhaps learning something new about your tank that you may not have quite known beforehand. Let me show you a replay or two of what I mean by this. And we're back, and we are in a tier 8 game with my medium tank, the Comet. Now, this thing has been known. Not tier 8, did I just say? Oh, I do apologise. Tier 7. Yes. So, this is my tier 8 game in my tier 7 Comet. So yeah, this tank is more famously known for its abilities to medium, or for those who don't quite understand, the ability to go round enemy tanks, flank them to buggery, and shoot them to hell. Not known for other qualities. Armour-wise, not so fine. Turret traverse, pretty good. Gun, alright. Most certainly better, though, in close-quarter scenarios. So, I decided, because I was first out, this was an encounter mode on Hidden Valley? I think? I can't remember now. This map, basically, the capture point is over there, and I at first was going to camp, or say, stand here and try and have some shots, but I decided to go a little further in an impromptu chance, and good timing as well, because, bang! Unfortunately, I didn't get to do anything. By the way, because I've got the gun sounds mods, it's going to lag for a few early seconds. So instead, I decided to resign myself to just trying to get shots in on people. So, there's KV-1S. I'm trying to have a shot at him. Bang! Ooh, I did a fairly good job on him, eh? So on this one, I'm just trying to keep my... at this point, I'm just trying to keep the enemy tank that's currently capping spotted for our team. So I'm just trying to have some shots in. There's an enemy Hellcat, taking care not to get shot myself. I'm trying to go for shots, whilst also trying to avoid getting shot myself. There are enemy tanks out there. I take a pot shot. I kind of was being a little confident with that one, to be honest with you. So now the enemy tank's having a look at me. I try and have a little go at him. So I spot, I fire, I once again miss. I'm waiting for my shell to reload. And fire, a nice shot into his cupola. All the while keeping him secured. Now, just to let you know, I'm not really flanking nor attacking, but I'm actually able to keep spotting my opponents. So definitely, I'm spotting this guy, and I'm spotting these guys. These guys are all paying attention to that, and because I'm keeping all these guys distracted by shooting at them and being a general nuisance, these guys are moving up quite peacefully, waiting until I can spot them again, so they can get pot shots on them. So in this one, I'm just trying to get shots in. Bang! There's the first kill for one of our team. Or second kill. I try and have a shot in. I unfortunately take some damage, but by this point, now the game's starting to change. We're now starting to get shots. I'm just shooting at him. I'm wasting ammunition, but as long as I'm pissing him off. Of course, now that we've been able to reset the cap, I'm going to try and go for another glacier shot. That misses quite badly. I'm trying to get shots in on this. I try and get a shot in. Naturally, it ricochets. Can I get in the shot? Nope. Oh, I'm taking too much time here. Heal my gunner. I have to try and fix my turret now, so I've spent some money. I'm trying to find that point. Fire. Nah. Oh, that's why. So there's another target I've spotted. So now this game is certainly turning around, and I'm keeping these enemy tanks spotted for them. Still trying to spot the enemy VK4502A, which is more commonly known as the duck tank. I'm currently then deciding, right, I've done enough for this bit. I'm going to leave that territory I've just gone onto and go for something else with a Hellcat. I narrowly dodge a shot, using the rocks to my advantage, get into a nice sort of ricochet hold position. Not really that clever, aren't me admitting myself. I could have easily died here. If they had focused on me and shot a little earlier, I would have possibly died. So now it's that sort of final Duke-off stage. We have completely overwhelmed their northern flank. Now I'm starting to see if I can get shots on that. I'm now starting to load premium shells because, you know, unfortunately there isn't anything I could do otherwise. Trying to get little looks into the enemy. Have a little look. Fire. Penetrate his frontal turret. Shoot. Miss. Trying to avoid being shot as well. Not sure why I got stuck there, but oh well. So now I start to I try to get myself into a good position. I may have spent a little bit too much time here, to be honest with you. At first I thought I was going to just resign myself to the cap. I'm like, guys, come on, they've got mediums. Threat's still about. Just because we're capping doesn't mean anything. So eventually I'm starting to decide whether I should go up north. To be honest with you, I would have gone now. So you can learn even from looking back at my videos, even back at replays. So then I finally decide to move up after wasting enough time. And I start to make a move towards getting something, you know, like, right, okay, so clearly the enemy team are on the back foot, and now we can start making a move towards knocking them out. I try and get a little quickie shot in on that, but unfortunately he dies before I have a chance. Our tanks and Comrade are decimating the remnants of the game. This is pretty much the enemy on the back foot now. They've completely lost. We've taken the field. AMX 6100, I get a shot in, it ricochets. I want to get a shot in, bang. I get some small damage, but not enough. Bang, I get a nice shot into the Jagdpanzer. I get a nice shot into the Jagdpanzer. I try and get another shot in, I miss. And this guy tries to make a desperate charge for it, but bang. And that's the game for him. And now I try and move into position using whatever I can. I realise it's quite a bold and risky maneuver. I shoot, didn't do enough to penetrate, trying to focus in. I track him, I take a very nasty hit. I could have died, but luckily I didn't. I try and then finally use the mediuming tactics that this thing is so far famous for. I fear for my life, and the game is over. Here is the battle results screen, and here are my rewards. First of all, I got a patrol duty. Basically what it means is you have to spot at least 6 enemy tanks, and help, you know, basically by highlighting them and allowing your team to damage them. And also I got Scout, which is super rare for me because I'm not really much of a scouting person. But there you go. This whole vehicle, this Comet tank, which I previously thought to just be a medium tank, turns out to be quite an effective scout. I was able to detect most of the vehicles, and you can see most damage to our opponents. I actually did some critical damage to this vehicle. And generally speaking, I did a lot more than I thought I did. And as a team score, I didn't get the most did I get the most experience? I can't tell. I got second most experience, and I only missed out by 10. But as you can see, I only did, what, just over 1,000 damage. And some people who did more damage than I did actually got less experience than me. Either because he, you know, stole... Either that or, yeah, he probably didn't steal because that massive damage. But still, really effective gameplay. Quite simply because of just how I did. There you go. Damage upon detecting over nearly 4K. So, yeah, that's one of the things about knowing your tactics in the location of where you are. And of course, having a team that takes advantage of it, because I can't stress enough, this kind of scenario are so rare. It's like watching a comet go by. I actually saw a comet go by, and I haven't seen one since. It's that rare. It's one of those sort of things which is like, take a picture or save the replay because it'll last longer. But yeah, so hopefully, you know, this does somewhat show you what can happen when it comes to knowing your terrain and knowing what kind of tactics you can utilize your vehicle in. And so, there you go. That's the Panzer 3-4 and the World of Tanks tip advice. And that's the end for Tier 5. The next tier will be, although it is a heavy, the VK3601H, yes. Yes, this monster of a tank, which used to be a medium when I had it. This thing used to be a This used to be a medium. It was quite a nice medium until they decided to bugger about with it. But still, this was my first taste of 88 millimeters. So yeah, looking forward to doing that episode, and looking forward to seeing you there as well. So that's about it for this one. Thank you very much for watching. If you like this kind of content, feel free to let me know by typing in the comment section down below, clicking on the like button, and of course subscribing to the channel. Any kind of feedback is greatly appreciated. All I ask is that there's no trolling, because what'll happen is I'll just assume you're a troll and delete the comment, and all your hard-earned times trying to think of some clever word to derp around with will have been for naught. So, yeah. Thank you very much for watching, guys. This is Crap Hunter, signing out. I'll catch you next time.